Hello, everyone, and welcome to another fun-filled evening of Garden Hour. So for the next hour, we've got a great group of panelists here that are going to cover a lot of information. We've got some specific things we want to talk about, of course, as we go around the tables. And then we're always here to answer your questions. So as was already mentioned, is we do have that little Q&A feature in there. And please feel free at any time this evening to drop us in a question. We might answer it just to you offline here, or we might hold it and give it to the entire audience because it's that general of a question. And you always come up with some good ones. So I'm expecting a lot out of you this evening. Well, my name is John Ball. I'm a professor here at South Dakota State University. I'm also the Extension Forestry Specialist and the Forest Health Specialist for the South Dakota Department of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Essentially, I'm the tree guy. And tonight I'm going to talk to you about just how hot it's been, like you didn't know, and what that's doing to your trees, as well as an update on emerald ash borer, pine wilt disease, and those darn squirrels. And then following me will be John. So John, what are you going to chat about tonight?
Yeah, well, good evening, everybody. My name is John McMaine, and I guess I could be called the water guy. And so I'm going to be talking about rain gardens. Yeah, hopefully get you excited to put in your own rain garden in the future.
And that will be followed by Christina from McCrory Gardens, and she'll be dropping in a little bit to talk to you later on about what's going on in the gardens. But then we also have Amanda.
Yeah, hi everyone. Amanda Bachman. I'm the Pesticide Education and Urban Entomology Field Specialist for SDSU Extension, and I'm going to go through obviously some of the cool insects I've been seeing. We're going to do a little refresher on cicada killers. I know that story went out yesterday as well. And then showing you a little bit of my experience with rearing out some monarchs. So you can get a lot of pretty insect pictures tonight.
All right, well, that all sounds great. And again, we're all looking forward to this evening. And I'll start out again by talking to you about some of the trees. And so we'll do what we used to do in the old days and say, next slide, please. So Amanda, could you pop that up? Well, there you go. And I'm going to start out with drought. Now, by the way, no surprise to anyone here, we're ahead in growing degree days this year. It has been warmer than normal. And so because of that, plant development really advanced very quickly this year. We had insects we normally don't see until late August that were showing up in early August, and a lot of other things with plant development. And this is the bad thing with plant development. We're already seeing fall color. Now, this is not good. This is the beginning of August, and we're already seeing trees beginning to turn. I took this picture of just a gorgeous tree, by the way, Sensation Box Elder. That's just beginning its fall color change. And truly, this box elder is a wonderful tree. It has just outstanding fall color, just bright reds in that. Unfortunately, and surprisingly, it's not hardy in eastern South Dakota. It has to be in a zone 5 location. So I took that picture in Hot Springs, and you can grow them there and in Rapid City and even up in Spearfish and then in Pierre, and then south of Sioux Falls you can grow them. But in Brookings, they'll actually tie back from winter kill. But look at that, it's already beginning to color. And then have you noticed the cottonwoods out there? I've seen cottonwoods that half their leaves have already turned. And unfortunately, in some other trees, they've already begun dropping their leaves. So we're seeing a little too early fall color. And I want to remind everyone too, that now this next month and into September is the time to water your trees to get them to prepare for winter, particularly your conifers. You know, too often people delay watering until just before freeze up. They say, well, I'll give my tree a drink just before the ground freezes. You're teasing the tree. You're not helping the tree. It really needs to go into fall and winter healthy. So right now, if you haven't been watering your trees, and I know a lot of you have been, but if you got particularly some small seedlings out there, if you can start getting them watered for about the next 6 weeks, that's going to make the difference for them to survive this winter and not suffer winter burn next March. So try to get the water out there now, and maybe the water guy will tell us what water is coming. I hope there's a lot. We need it. But next slide. A little bit of update on this insect, and it is the emerald ash borer. And again, as far as we know, it is still confined to Minnehaha and Lincoln County. Now, notice I phrase that as far as we know. And I say that because we never find the first insect in the first tree in a county or a city. Usually by the time we find it, it's been there for several years and is slowly expanding. But we have been monitoring the development of the insect as we do every year in Sioux Falls and in Canton, where we have numerous trees that are infested throughout both communities. And if you take a look at the picture to the left, at the very point of my knife is a little, and I do mean little, first instar, and that's the first stage, if you will, of the larval development of that little worm. And you can see how tiny that darn thing is. And the eggs just hatched a couple of weeks ago. And right now they're just that dinky. And you say, how could that really harm a tree? Well, first of all, they're not by themselves. They got all their brothers and sisters in there too. But the other thing is they get big. You know, right now that's less than 1/4 of an inch, you know, somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. And they're so tiny, they're just kind of threading their way through the phloem tissue, the tissue that moves the sugars through the tree, the yummy part of the tree, but that part that actually supplies the food to the roots. And if it's severed, then the roots are not able to get any food. And if the roots don't get food, they begin to die and no water's taken up. Hence the tree dies. But that little 1/8 to 1/4 inch little first instar is going to be a third instar sometime in the next 3 weeks, relatively quickly. And that's going to be 1.25 to 1.5 inches long insect. And it's not threading its way through the phloem tissue. It's plowing its way through the phloem tissue and even into the sapwood. So not only is it severing the phloem, it's also actually disrupting part of the sapwood, which is conducting the water through the tree too. And it's the third and fourth instars that do most of the damage to the tree. Well, what does that mean? That means if you have an ash tree in Sioux Falls, for example, Canton, or the surrounding communities in Minnehaha and Lincoln County, if you have an ash tree that you like, well, you should start treating it. And if you've been watching the show, we've been telling you that you should have treated it back in June. But I've gotten calls even this last week from people saying, well, you know, I had my tree treated back in 2019, and I know I'm supposed to treat it this year, right? And I said, yeah. Well, when? A month ago would have been better, but this week is okay. Now, 3 weeks from now is a little late for this year. They're already doing a lot of their damage at that point. I much prefer it to be done in the spring. But if you do it now, and by now I mean this week, so call a tree company and get them out there and have them do the injections into the tree, because that chemical will take about a week to be pulled up. And still, you'll still end up killing this insect before it gets much larger. But really, I know a lot of people procrastinate, myself included. I'm probably not the only one that files my taxes on the last hour of the last day, even though I knew they were coming. But on this insect, don't wait much longer. In a few more episodes, I'll show you what this grows into, kind of like a teenager overnight. And it gets to be one big bug fast. All right, my next slide. Squirrels gone wild. Here's the thing that I had to show you, and that is I'm getting a lot of squirrel calls right now. Now, interesting enough, I'm getting squirrel calls on trees such as ash, and people are thinking, oh my goodness, the emerald ash borer is cutting the leaves and dropping them to the ground. No, emerald ash borer doesn't do that. It burrows through the tree. And if you look at the picture to the left, those are oak leaves and twigs, and some of them have acorns attached to them. What squirrels are doing right now is they're bouncing around in the canopies of the trees, and they're nipping off the tips of oaks and ash right now. And why those two, we're not sure. But if you take a look at the cut end, it's kind of ragged, but looks like it was chewed or bitten off rather than just slowly tore away. And you'll find these all over the ground. Now, the squirrel is gathering a lot of these, and by gathering, it gathers them before they even hit the ground. So they just kind of run and carry them. And they use these to line their winter nest. They know winter's coming. And so somewhere in the cavity of the tree, they're building nests. And if they've got acorns attached to these, so much the better. You got a little food source. And they do the same thing with ash, particularly ash that have seeds still hanging from them. And they'll gather them all up and move them in so that they can kind of enjoy the winter. On hackberry, and that's the picture to the tree to the right here, what they're doing there is they girdle, they chew all the way around the base of the branch. And by doing that, they end up girdling the tree. And what happens is that it just dies. So right now, if you're taking a look, you'll see some yellowing appearing in the tops of hackberries. And they do this every year, and they seem to like the same branches until they kill them. And why squirrels do that, we have no idea, but they do. Okay, next and last slide. Well, I got a couple questions I'll answer too here, but I do have to show you this slide. The picture to the left, and anyone that lives in the Sioux Falls, Brookings, Del Rapids area probably knows those trees. This is a stand of Scots pines that's just off the 101 mile marker on I-29. And that stand became infested with pine wood nematode. And so we're seeing pine wilt disease developing in that. And what you'll notice, it's been going through that stand for the last few years, and it doesn't plow through it. It's more like a pinball. It bounces through it, kills a tree here or there, and then back and forth until eventually the entire stand is dead. And I expect that's going to occur within the next 2 years. And then the picture to the right actually was right behind my building. That is a Austrian pine that, believe it or not, almost in a week went from green to yellow or tan yellow, and then was dropping its needles left and right. And as I've mentioned before, this is a fatal disease of our two exotic pines, Scots pines and Austrian pines. And it is now spread throughout the entire state, having first entered it maybe 25, 30 years ago. And why is it throughout the state? It needs hot, dry summers for this disease to develop. And bingo, that's what we've been having. I do have two questions I want to answer here before I turn it over to the Rain Man here, who's going to come next. And that is, I got a question here. I have a new hydrangea tree, and the leaves are turning yellow with the edges turning brown. I've sprayed a pesticide with no success. Could it be a fungus? No, it's a hose issue. Hydrangeas are water pigs, as we call them. They need a tremendous amount of moisture. Now, again, it could possibly be something else, but right now, and if I'm looking at hydrangeas with yellow leaves and the margins are browning and curling, it's almost always the lack of water. So the first thing I would do is make sure you're getting water out there, because we have very few fungus problems this year. It's really been too hot and dry for them. And then where in Hot Springs, the sensation box elder. The picture that I took was right up at the South Dakota Veterans Home, right up on the hill. If you drive up there and go around the parking lot to the back, you'll see a line of them. And again, some of them are showing spectacular fall color, but I would much prefer that fall color to be kicking in about a month from now rather than now. But again, you won't think they're box elders but these trees grow straight. So with that, I think I'm at time here, about 7:15. And I'm going to turn it over to John, the Rain Man.
Very good. Well, thanks, John. Man, it's going to be tough to match your energy. I don't even know if I'm going to try, but that's awesome. So a little bit of background, and I hate to start off with a really technical slide, but let's think of it as going back to fourth grade hydrology, fourth grade, science class, and talking about the water cycle. And so on the left side, we have kind of the typical things that you think about, right? You have condensation in the clouds, and then rain that comes down, and then it lands on the ground, and some of that will go into the ground. And in fact, in a natural system, most of that will go into the ground. And then you have some that goes back up to the atmosphere. That would be the second biggest piece in a natural system. And then maybe 10% of that precipitation, 5 to 10% becomes runoff. So it flows off the ground surface and it goes into a stream. But again, the biggest portion of that rainfall is infiltration. And so whenever we have that water underground, it's doing more than just not running off. It's also feeding streams. So typically in very hot, dry summers and the stream goes dry, it's typically because the groundwater has actually gone below the level of the stream. And so many times streams are fed by groundwater. But now let's consider the urban water cycle. What happens when you have urbanization? You pave, you put in houses and structures, and all those things are very necessary, of course. We need to be able to drive and walk and have structures. We don't want leaky roofs, right? Because otherwise things inside the house get wet. But all those things change the water cycle. And so you basically cut off the connection between the rainfall and the groundwater. So you get less water going into the ground and moving through the ground. And you get a lot more water actually going off the surface. So you've gone from an infiltration dominated system to a runoff dominated system. And we can see some of the things in this figure that causes. One of them is streams are less consistent. They're only rain fed. They're not really groundwater fed. And so I'm going to talk about rain gardens today. And rain gardens are a way that we can get back closer to that kind of natural water cycle. So next slide, please. So a rain garden is a pretty easy way that a homeowner can, again, go from a runoff dominated system and get back closer to an infiltration dominated system. Now, what we have in the figure here is a kind of typical yard, potentially. You have an impervious surface with the roof, or an impervious surface is a surface that water can't penetrate. It can't go through. And so every drop of rain, or 95% of the rain that falls on that roof is gonna just run off. And typically that's connected to a gutter, which is connected to maybe a storm drain, which then goes into the storm sewer and heads right into the creek or ditch or stream or whatever. And so a rain garden, essentially, it creates a barrier between the source of that runoff, the roof, and where that runoff would head on downstream. So we're getting water quality improvements and we're getting water quantity improvements. And to be honest, they're essentially landscape features with a function. So you're taking what would be just a normal, maybe a garden feature, and you're having it with a little bit of a dip in it, so you can pond some water in there, and then you're putting plants in, so you're still getting a very beautiful, positive space in your yard while also having a function of keeping water from going downstream and improving water quality. Next slide. And rain gardens come in all shapes and sizes. And so the remainder of these pictures are just going to be different examples of rain gardens that I hope I can kind of pique your interest. But this one is in Oklahoma City. It's one I worked on when I was doing my PhD down there. And there's a nice dry stream bed that kind of collects water. And then the bottom part is the rain garden. So this had about 8 inches of ponding, had these nice black-eyed Susans, had really a lot of different native plants, which we would obviously select for South Dakota, not for Oklahoma. But again, it's in a backyard. It's taking runoff from upstream, and it's a really, again, a nice space that's also serving a function. Next slide, please. But on the other hand, they can range to pretty big. So this is in the same project, same neighborhood that last one was in. And we approached the homeowner here. he really enjoyed chipping golf balls from the top of his hill where the larger picture is taken down into the lower area down there. And so we said, well, hey, we'll work with you and we'll make this into a chipping green. And so as you can see on the top right picture, it has a function. It's able to hold water for 24 to 48 hours, and then allow that to infiltrate into the ground. But we added some sand traps. We added some really nice pine and cedar trees around the outside, so kind of give it the real feel of a chipping green. So like he was just at the golf course, but again, serving a function. So they kind of come in all different sorts of shapes and sizes. Next slide, please. And this is one that we put in Sioux Falls. And so again, they don't have to be huge. This one, we split this into two, but it could have just been the one side, which measures about 5 feet wide by 20 feet long. Rule of thumb is we want the rain garden area to be about 10% the size of the drainage area. And so if you have 100 square feet of drainage area, your rain garden would be 10 square feet. You're typically going to have more than that, of course, but that's kind of our rule of thumb. And then in this rain garden, we have meadow blazing star, we have some echinacea, and then black-eyed Susan. So kind of typical landscaping plants, but ones that can get their feet wet as well as withstand kind of drier conditions in between. Next slide, please. This is one we did in Brookings. This is at the Boys and Girls Club. So if you're in the area, we do hope to be doing some tours of this particular rain garden. And we just put it in last fall. And so it's kind of coming into its own. With the drought this year, the plants have had a little bit of a hard time coming in, but next slide, please. And then again, kind of going from large back to small. This is again a small one that I've worked on previously, and this was kind of designed for the aesthetic. And so again, they kind of range in whatever aesthetic you're really interested in. It's more about plant selection. Next slide, please. And so the previous one was kind of more of a manicured, typical landscape, but you can go all the way to the other end and go for the real wild and woolly, lots of pollinators, really a great habitat piece as well. But again, all of these are not just gorgeous landscaping features, but they're also serving a great function to capture, hold, and infiltrate and filter stormwater before it goes downstream. Next slide. And so one of the biggest things, questions I get is, well, John, what about cost? I don't want to have to pay for a rain garden. And you know, I would say the flip side is any landscaping you do is going to cost money. So this is a neighborhood, in the neighborhood where my in-laws live in Illinois. I walk by this house every time I go for a walk at their house. And I don't know how much money and time is put into this garden, and it's beautiful. I love it, but it's not like it. We could just do make a few changes, maybe reroute those gutters to get them to flow in here, and change the media, maybe add a little bit of plumbing. So it wouldn't take a whole lot more extra to turn this thing into a really nice functional rain garden. So I don't want to hear the excuse rain gardens cost money, because any landscaping costs money, and it's more about thinking about how we can take that space, use it not just for, beautiful landscape feature, but also one that can really serve a function of improving stormwater and reducing stormwater runoff, improving water quality. So I think that's all I've got.
Anyone has any questions out there about rain gardens, make sure to throw those into the Q&A so that John can take a look at them while Christina is going. So Christina, I got the pictures that you sent. I put them onto slides, and you get the added bonus of they're sort of in the order that you sent them, but your next slide might be essentially a surprise.
That's okay. Sounds great to me. So, hi everybody. I'm excited to tell you what's going on at at McCrory Gardens. This week and kind of right now, I'm going to open this just so that I can see a couple things in case I need to on the side. But so right here, I just are some beautiful flowers are blooming again. I don't know how many of you made it to a garden party, but it was a really, really wonderful night. And had lots of lovely things, but it's definitely not too late to come and join some of our other events and see some of these other, or just come see the flowers, come see the trees and shrubs and everything. We have our insect festival coming up September 11. So definitely keep your calendars wide for that from 10 to 2. We'll be having, cockroach races, a pollinator parade, assemble an arthropod, all kinds of fun things will be happening for the festival. And then we also have the weekend of move-in day for SDSU. If any of you are SDSU students are going to be or have children that will be or anything like that, that is, I believe the 20th is the weekend of move-in weekend, and families are free to come to the gardens. So that's kind of a fun perk, and students are always free to enter the garden. So it'd just be a fun kind of get away from moving in to come and check out the lovely gardens. The plant that you see in front of you, that is Joe Pyeweed, or Little Joe is the cultivar for that one. So that's just a really really neat plant. You can see how big it is in that photo to the left, I guess, but it has those beautiful red stems just covered in monarchs, especially as they start their migration. If they're still in bloom and the timing is right, which it usually is kind of right on par with them coming through, you'll just be surprised and awarded, I guess, with all of these lovely monarchs. And even without, you see tons of other life around these plants. It's a little more compact than the straight species and stands a little more upright and than that one. But all right, you can go on to the next one. So now I just wanted to show you guys some of the annuals that are in bloom right now. I feel like every week I kind of talk about some of these lovely perennials that you see, which of course are a wonderful favorite, that you can come back for you year to year and get nice deep rooted and things like that. But we have a lot of really nice annuals that I think I'd love to highlight too. In that top left corner, that's a vinca, and that I don't know the exact one, but it is part of the tattoo series. So there's like tattoo papaya and several other of the tattoo series. So definitely watch out for those, the Catharanthus vinca. And they are just so vibrant. And I'll tell you too, that now that I'm out here on growing on a farm in some very exposed areas, and also very exposed to lots of critters that like to destroy my plants. That one, for whatever reason, has really, really thrived in the little pollinator garden and the garden in front of the house. And so that's one that has actually become more of a favorite to me this year. And then kind of on the opposite, side there to the bottom and to the right, those are both kind of shady. That's a little shady pocket there in the perennial, or the President's Garden, that looks really beautiful, but you can see that it has a lot of shade plants. From the impatiens, I think there's some begonias, but they're further in the back of the photo, and all kinds of coleus. Coleus is an ultimate favorite. If you want to pick one, you could only buy one annual plant. I would probably pick coleus, just because it comes in so many colors and it can fill out a pot, or it can complement any other color and any other flower, and just the leaves are beautiful. So you don't even need, the blossoms, but it also, those blossoms, the pollinators actually like them if you want to leave them on there. some people like to pinch them off to have better bushier growth, but and they don't have the cultivar of that one, but it is, well, it actually I do, but it's a mix. So it's not a specific one. The one on the left, it's part of a mix called Wizard Mix of Plectranthus or Coleus. So you can go into the next one. So a couple other favorites that I love is that one on the left there. It's kind of nearing the end of its bloom now, but I was glad that I caught a couple blossoms. This is a leopard lily. Iris domestica is what it is. And it's just, it's just covered. It gets these little, they're kind of dainty little flowers. You can kind of tell the scale by that little soldier beetle that's in there, but pretty dainty little flowers, but really vibrant and really unique and kind of have that speckling pattern. And then when it's done blooming, they like twist up in this little curly queue. And so they're really cute and a favorite of mine. And then on the right, we have more alliums blooming. So that one is the Millennium cultivar, and it's just really a nice cultivar. It has kind of just full cluster of flowers up on the top. So we can move on. So this one, I love this plant. So this is Celosia. It's a cristata type of Celosia. And this one is, the cultivar is Carum corona, like K-U-R-U-M-E, and then corona, C-O-R-O-N-A. Some people familiar with the name now, Carum corona. Boy, is that beautiful. Like up in the top left, this like, that's all one plant. It's like, it can come out all different, even on the same plant. Up on the top left, you can have like a half and halfsies. And then the bottom, you can see how it can be just intermixed and sort of flecked and freckled with the different colors in it. And it's just got this twisty, fuzzy, appearance that you just don't see very often in very many plants. I think it's a really unique plant, sort of a Dr. Seuss plant, almost looks like a fuzzy little brain, I always say. But then on the right, you can kind of see what the plant itself looks like as well. And that's in our transition garden area. If you do make your way to the garden and want to check it out in person, that's kind of by the trial gardens in the transition garden. So I don't know, is this the last? Oh no, I have another one. I have my amaranth. That is just the coolest amaranth. And let's see if I took a, it is Archie's Red Spike is the Amaranthus cruentus is the, I wanted to make sure I remember the name of that one. So the ones in the back are gigantic. They're like as tall as me. And that again is another part of the transition garden there. And, some of our staff, like, I think Miranda and Sid might've done this area, but they just did wonderful color combos and plant combos. That's a really beautiful area to check out when you're in the gardens. But if you look down at the bottom there, those are those vinca, the tattoo vinca at the bottom underneath the amaranth. You can see just how giant it is and just funky. It kind of looks like something that would be under the sea. I don't know. So that's another kind of neat plant. And one thing I've noted about that is it doesn't, when it's a wet year, it does not do very well in really thick, like clay kind of wet soils. This was a wonderful example, a dry, hot year, and look at it. It's huge and gorgeous. So it does seem to thrive really well in those kind of growing environments. So I think that's my last plant to share with you guys today. So,
yes, it is. We ended on the amaranth.
Awesome. That's a good one to end on. It's a beautiful one. So does anybody have any questions for me at all? I see here.
There's one about getting rid of horseradish. I don't know if that's one that you've had any experience with.
I have not had problems with or experience with the horseradish. So I might leave that to someone else to answer that, but one of the experts on that. But if anybody has any questions about the gardens or any other questions, I'm happy to give it a shot and All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. I hope you get a chance to come see the gardens, take a tour of it, or to come and also to come and see maybe the Insect Fest and one of the activities that are coming up. Because after the Insect Fest, I should mention, we also have the music and entertainment every weekend throughout September. Party on the Porch, they call it. So watch out for that as well. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. See you, Christina. And I've got a slide on Insect Fest too. So they're getting it twice tonight.
Thank you. Sounds good. Bye.
Yeah, so going over some of the insects that I've been seeing over the past week, or really since the last time I was on Garden Hour with everybody. I've seen the memes going around Facebook of, make sure you lock your car doors because someone might put a zucchini in it. My zucchini plants I only planted 2. They're somewhat stunted. They got a little bit of a late start because it wasn't until mid-July that I put the soaker hose on them. But now they are regularly producing, 1 or 2 zucchini every day, which is, enough. That's plenty of zucchini. But if you are also growing zucchini or summer squash or pumpkins or butternuts or anything in that Cucurbita genus, take a look at the flowers when they're open in the morning and you might find your very own squash bees. So I included a picture here. You can see they have the nice, cute, stripy little abdomen. They are about the same size as honeybees, but their color scheme is just a little bit different. So if you take a look in your squash flowers, you might find them. Sometimes the males will sleep in the squash flowers. So that once they've closed, they might be hanging out there, sort of for the rest of the day. But they are specialists on squash. So if you are planting squash, it's like you want to have those squash bees around so that you get, sort of good fruit set. And if you are growing cucurbits and you notice that your fruit is misshapen or not sort of fully developed the whole way down the fruit, that is an indication that you are not incomplete pollination, that you're not getting enough pollinator visits for all of those ovules to fully develop. So that can be sometimes mistaken for like a disease issue when in fact it's, not enough bee pollination. Cicada killers, they still aren't murder hornets. Kello actually did a story with us yesterday, so you may have seen that out and about, or you can check it out on the Kelloland website. They got some great footage of cicada killer wasps on a flowering shrub. I'm guessing somewhere in the Sioux Falls area, but I'm still getting calls about the cicada killers, and their season will sort of be winding down here at the end of August. But if you're seeing these large wasps out and about, like I said before on previous weeks, they're not something that you need to manage. You can let them do their own thing. Next time I'm on, I will probably talk some more about the social wasps because we're starting to get some more questions about those. But the cicada killers, still not murder hornets. They're still not going to carry off your pets or small children, but they are a very cool insect that are, out there hunting the cicadas out of the trees. And this is a dill umbel. This one's actually, I believe, from last year, maybe 2019. But they will go to flowering plants for nectar. So you might see them on some of your flowers as well. So, maybe in your rain garden or other places that you have some annuals or perennials, you might find the cicada killers visiting that because they need the nectar for their own energy. The cicada is actually for their larvae. And so cool insect alert. The monarch butterflies. I was at garden party last Friday. It was absolutely gorgeous. The weather ended up being like pretty decent for early August in this very hot, dry year of summer in South Dakota. And honestly, the lack of moisture made it so that it was like the one time at McCrory that I did not get eaten alive by mosquitoes. So there's just enough water for the plants, but not enough extra for a lot of mosquito development out there, or at least I wasn't out there late enough to notice it. But I did notice a decent number of monarchs that were flying around. I actually watched one that oviposited or laid her egg on a milkweed plant right outside the visitor center. So I was checking all of the milkweed throughout the garden, looking to see if I could find any caterpillars. I didn't see any, but I bet there were probably some there that I just wasn't finding. Back in July, I actually collected some eggs out of my yard and then reared them out. And so you can kind of see the size progression here on the left. These are the same caterpillars, but this is just a couple of days after they hatch. So they start out really tiny. I think they're absolutely just the cutest little things with their tiny little stripes, and they get the tiny little horns on their head and on their tails. And you can see that they're so small that they don't even like eat the whole way through the milkweed leaf. They kind of just eat that sort of first layer. And it's not until they get kind of larger that they're able to really chomp down on those milkweed leaves. And you can see on the right, this is as they're getting closer to chrysalis size. I think they actually went into the J shape and pupated maybe about 2 days after I took this picture. But I keep them supplied with a couple of leaves of fresh milkweed every day. I change it out regularly because you want to make sure that you get the frass or the insect poop out of there to keep the containers or the areas where you're rearing them clean. But I do have a lot of wasps in my yard, so I do try to rear them up until they're, you know, a big enough size that they're not going to get carried off if I do have to like put them back outside for some reason. But since they did actually, you know, make their chrysalis and emerge, I wanted to show you folks what that looks like, because not very many people actually get to see a late stage monarch chrysalis. When they're the chrysalis, they're that green color. They usually wander off of the milkweed and, you know, will hang on almost anything else in order to form that chrysalis. So, you know, if you stumble across one in the wild, it's really cool to see. It'll have those sort of gold flecks that almost look like, you know, sort of decoration along the top here, and then a couple dots here along the bottom. But when the monarch is almost ready to emerge, the chrysalis will essentially turn clear, and you'll see the essentially like the folded up butterfly inside. So you'll be able to see, you know, the orange and the black of the wings. You'll be able to see the spots. And then I found that monarchs, if you've ever tried to take pictures of them, they can be really hard to sneak up on. They'll fly really high. They'll, you know, be really skittish. But when they're newly emerged, that is the time when you can get some nice close-ups of them, because they are not, you know, sort of fully hardened in order to fly. So this was actually the male. This is a male that emerged from this chrysalis. Released it into my, you know, backyard of sunflowers to go live his life, you know, maybe mate, maybe find his way down to Mexico. But it was a process that took about a month. And eggs that are laid now, those caterpillars, you know, will, fingers crossed, make it to be butterflies, and those butterflies will most likely be the ones that are headed south on the monarch migration. So for those of you along the I-29 corridor, you know, especially around State Fair week or weekend, that Labor Day weekend, that's when we really start to see those monarchs moving through. So keep an eye out then. They'll start to sort of mass up. They might roost in trees in your neighborhood and then, you know, move on the next day. So if you do see that, it's a really cool, just a really neat phenomenon. So keep an eye out for your monarch butterflies. And then here's the info on Insect Fest. I will leave this up while I take a look at the Q&A. I know that we got one that came in while I was chatting, but make sure to put September 11th on your calendar and come see us at McCrory Gardens. It's a free admission day at the garden as well, and things looked great for garden party, and I know the gardens will still be beautiful even into early September. So we have a question of, are insects fewer this season? You know, a lot of people have been saying that they've been sort of noticing less insect activity around, and it's not necessarily that there are fewer insects, it's that, especially with things like pollinators. I was doing a presentation with Jacob Dyer from Game Fish and Parks last week, and he was talking about the plant side of things. I was talking about the insect side of things, and he had a really great observation from some of his field work that, you know, out on the prairies and stuff, the insects are still there. It's just that they are down in the draws, or the areas where there's still some moisture and still flowering plants. Up on, you know, the ridges and the slopes where it's really, really dry, there just are not the floral resources for a lot of the insects. So, you know, overall, there's sort of this, global trend, and been some papers and reports about, overall sort of insect abundance, declining, sort of those windshield surveys. But I think what we're seeing in some parts of South Dakota this year is, with how dry it's been, that our insects are sort of concentrated in, in the areas where they do have resources, be that flowers, pollen and nectar, or, other insects if they are predators. So I know my backyard, I've been struggling with, having a lot of things in bloom just because it's been so dry. But the sunflowers that I do have, the plants that I do have blooming are seeing still, a lot of insect activity. Some of it too is you just have to take a closer look. Not all insects are big and charismatic and easy to spot. So yeah, I don't know. We got to take more data. Like, do some nature journaling in your backyard, and work on like quantifying what you're seeing from year to year too. That can be not only a really great exercise just to be in touch with what's going on in your little backyard ecosystem, but then also to have numbers to look at from year to year to see what's going on long term. So I will also put up our garden hotline information. I see, I got a question about chiggers. Chiggers, there's really not a solid way to manage them in the environment. Mowing always helps. They do tend to like sort of like weedier areas, or brushier areas. I always pick them up at a wahi downstream. So if I am in a place that I know has chiggers, I do make sure to not only wear repellent, so I'll make sure that I spray around my ankles and on my feet so that they're not crawling up my legs. But then I also, as soon as I'm done in that area, go home, take a shower, change clothes. Chiggers take a while before they actually feed on you. And so if you can physically remove them from your body, that's another good way to prevent the bites. But there is not anything that is going to be effective when sprayed area wide to deal with chiggers. They are the immature form of the trombiculid mite, and they have been vexing humans for well over 100 years. So put on your DEET and make sure to take a shower after you are in chigger territory. That is my best advice on chiggers, as somebody who still has scars from the last time I ran into them this summer. So I feel everyone's pain when it comes to chiggers.
And Amanda, I got two questions for you. First of all, chiggers must be global. I can remember decades ago down in the tropics, getting kind of bit by those right around the belt, correct? Those were probably chiggers. All right. Then my other question is, so just an old friend, I guess. And then my other question is, okay, you take your dog out in that tall grass, you come in and take a shower, but the dog sits on the couch and you sit on the couch. Any chance there, or they just avoid dogs?
I mean, yeah. So I have inside cats, so they're not bringing me any arthropods from the outdoors. But yeah, dogs can be great sort of vectors for chiggers, and also they can be sort of the way that ticks hitchhike indoors as well. So, you may want to, give the dog a wipe down with a, just like a, not necessarily a full on bath, but maybe give them a wipe down, and then, keep up with sort of like vacuuming the sofa, honestly, if you're really allergic to chigger bites. I know I get a really fun blister reaction to them, which is not a great time.
I imagine not. And then my final question, and then if you want, you can kind of close for us. Did I hear correctly at the Insect Fest, there's going to be cockroach races?
Yes. Yes, there will be cockroach races. There will also be edible insects. So it's not going to be the loser cockroaches. There will be specifically edible insects.
Is this kind of like the pig races at Old McDonald's farm in Rapid City, or what?
I mean, having never experienced this.
How do you race a cockroach?
You pick your favorite cockroach, and we have a little track for them, and you kind of hope that they go in the right direction.
All right. Well, I'm sure everybody here now is definitely.
I know,
gonna-
right? Yeah, Christina, like it's super fun. I should have.
And this is occurring outside, I hope.
Yes,
No.
yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yeah, weather permitting. I think there was only
Yes.
1 year that we moved everything inside to the Great Hall because it was just raining. But yeah, we'll be outside in sort of that straw bale house area. There will be a food truck. So if you don't want to just eat insects, there will be other food.
Okay, food truck and cockroaches. That is not a good combination. I'm just saying. So let's hope we have a little separation here.
Yeah, no, they'll be fine. We do have that one question in the Q&A about trying to get rid of horseradish. I know a lot of our hort folks are out at a conference this week, so that's where Christine and Rhoda are. But yeah, John, I don't know. Do you have any tips on digging out horseradish? Just keep at it until it finally dies?
I'm sorry, being the tree guy, my only advice is dropping trees on them. And I do apologize, but yeah, that's not my area of expertise or even knowledge. So I'll pass on that one. But you know what we will do? We'll ask our horticulturists that are at a meeting right now and have them see if they can answer that question for the person. And maybe they'll mention it next week on another episode of Garden Hour so that everyone can hear it. But yeah, we'll wait for the experts, I guess.
Yep. Sorry, we're going to punt that one. Hopefully I'm going to stop my share here real quick. But hopefully in the chat, we can drop the links to the resources that we have available for folks. We've got the garden hotlines, we've got the Yard and Garden newsletter, John Ball's tree pest alert, and then there is also a YouTube playlist of all of the previous garden hours. So if you want to go back and review, just see exactly how long John Ball's been saying to water your trees pretty much all season.
Yeah. Well, at least I've been consistent, you know?
Yes. The advice this year has been very consistent. So yeah, with that, if there's any last minute questions, throw them in the Q&A. We'll take a look and probably get back to you either via email or check them out next week. But going around sort of the horn here, John McMaine, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your info about rain gardens. Any closing thoughts, or what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on the extension website. You can also follow me on Twitter, and August is National Water Quality Month. And so I'm doing a tweet thread a day of a different water quality topic. So check me out there. And then we also just launched a water podcast called Streamlines, and you can check that out. It releases every Wednesday. And so tomorrow, episode 5 will be out. So that can all be on the extension website.
Cool. Awesome. Christina, where can we find you next? Insect Fest, of course.
Yeah, Insect Fest, absolutely, on September 11th. I'll be back on here in a couple weeks. This coming weekend, we actually have a farm field day where I live and also work at Blue Dasher Farm. So if you want to check that out too, it's farming for wildlife. And we'll have Casey Jensen here, and the state botanist that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, yep, Jacob Dyer, he'll be out there.
Yep, he'll be out there giving a tour too. So you could find me there too. So there's a couple places. Love to see you all.
Yeah, and I'm going to be randomly in Highmore this weekend giving a talk at, I think, their 4-H days on Saturday mornings. So if anyone's in the Highmore area, swing by, I think, like the auditorium at like 11 a.m. I have to look and see exactly where in Highmore I am. But yeah, that's where I will be. Otherwise, I'll be here in Pierre taking questions about probably murder hornets for the rest of the week. And I'll see folks at Dakota Fest next Wednesday. So if you're in the Mitchell area and want to swing by Dakota Fest, I will be down there. But I'll hand it off to John to close us out officially.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda. And yes, and I will be, as I'm always doing, just driving around the state aimlessly looking at trees and telling people that the only control they need is H2O and apply to the soil, not to the leaves or deep below the root system. So water, water, water is our mantra for this year. And then tomorrow night, I'm into Sept. So talking about emerald ash borer. So Dr. Doom is probably the best way to refer to me. I have no good news ever. But we appreciate you joining us this evening, and my thanks to all our panelists this evening for this, and obviously my thanks to the audience that has participated, and we certainly appreciate your continued viewing, and we look forward to seeing you again next week on another hour of Garden Hour. So thanks again and have a good evening.